Good afternoon, my Real News Midday TV family. Welcome back to the channel for another news update for Saturday, October 4, 2025. And in the news this afternoon, Golden's letter to Holness signals early turbulence in constitutional reform process. The constitutional reform process, which was stalled during the last parliamentary term due to major disagreements between the Jamaica Labour Party and the People's National Party, has already hit a possible roadblock just days into the new term. Opposition leader and the PNP President Mark Golding on Friday stated that after Prime Minister and the JLP leader Andrew Holness extended an invitation for both the political leaders to partner to complete the work started in making Jamaica a republic, he had expected to meet with Holness. However, Holness proposed that he meet with the Minister of Justice and the Constitutional Affairs, Delroy Chuck, on the matter. That approach will not initiate the required partnership of which we speak, Golding said in a letter to Holness, which he made public. I therefore invite you to reconsider the matter in light of what I am suggesting in this letter and look forward to hearing from you presently, Golding wrote. The opposition leader said he had welcomed the Prime Minister's entreaty for both the leaders to work on the matter at his swearing-in ceremony last month, as it was consistent with the reality that the government does not now have a two-thirds majority in either House of Parliament, further reinforcing the imperative of partnership between Jamaica's two major political parties if progress is to be made in reforming the Constitution. I accept that the only route to reaping success in this reform effort is through authentic collaboration, as demonstrated by former political leaders, Golding continued. He told Holness that it was his heartfelt desire that we complete our unfinished circle of independence by establishing Jamaica's full sovereignty. This means leaving both the British monarch as head of state and the British monarch's Privy Council as the final court of appeal, and in a manner that our constitution no longer originates from an order in council of the British monarch. Both the JLP and the PNP, as well as many Jamaicans, agree on ditching the British monarch while transitioning to republic status. However, the parties differ on what should be Jamaica's final appellate court, with the PNP favoring the Caribbean Court of Justice and Holness stating in May 2024 and in the leadership debate before the September 3 general election that he and the JLP prefer Jamaica having its own final court. Additionally, Holness and the JLP are insisting that the final decision should be made by the Jamaican people in a referendum. The issue of the final court was the sticking point that led the PNP in January this year to boycott the meetings of the Joint Select Committee of the Parliament that was examining the Constitution Amendment Republic Bill tabled by then Minister of Legal and Constitutional Affairs Marlene Malahoo Fort. Of note is that Malahoo Fort was not reappointed to the Holness cabinet after the September 3 general election, and the portions of her ministry subsumed in Chuck's Justice Ministry. In his two-page letter dated October 3, the opposition leader cited as examples of past collaborations the Bruce Golding-led JLP collaborating with the Portia Simpson-Miller-led PNP when Golding opened the debate on the Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedoms in 2010 and outlined the imperative of partnering in the reform process since the Constitution requires it. Similarly, on December 2, 2021, former Prime Minister P.J. Patterson wrote to you and I saying that the solution to constitutional reform requires unity of purpose and action transcending partisan borders, Golding stated in his letter. This approach also accords with Jamaica's democratic tradition. History shows that in transitioning from colonial status to political independence, there was a constant interaction between Norman Washington Manley and Sir Alexander Bustamante, as there was between P.J. Patterson and Edward Siaka during the seminal constitutional reform undertakings of the 1990s, said Golding. Accordingly, it is you and I, as leaders of Jamaica's two major political parties, who must establish a basis for the required partnership if the reform process is not to become another exercise in futility, he added. Golden told the Prime Minister he would be making the letter public, given that your embrace of partnership was expressed in a public speech. Election campaign financing report due October 15. The Electoral Commission of Jamaica is reminding candidates and the contributors involved in the September 3, 2025 general election to submit their election financing reports by Wednesday, October 15, in keeping with the legal requirements under the Representation of the People Act. All candidates or their official agents must file the Return of Election Expenses Form 22 within 6 weeks of Election Day. Expenditure by any candidate, whether independent or representing a registered political party, is capped at $15 million. Candidates are also required to submit a Declaration of Candidate Form 7, confirming that no impermissible contributions were received, as outlined in Section 5280(1) of the Act. Where applicable, they must also complete the Return of Contribution Form, Impermissible Contributor Form 3, and/or Transmission of Contribution to Accountant General Form 4 for unidentified or impermissible donations. Contributors who donated to a campaign are reminded that their Declaration of Contributor Form 5 and the receipt for making contribution Form 6 must also be submitted by the October 15 deadline. Reports should be submitted to the returning officer for the relevant constituency or delivered to the Director of Elections, 43 Duke Street, Kingston, for the attention of the Legal Affairs and the Compliance Department. The Electoral Commission of Jamaica will publish a summary of the declarations once the submissions are received. NCU President wants church spaces to be converted into learning centers. President of Northern Caribbean University, Professor Lincoln Edwards, is calling for a partnership between the government and the churches to convert their spaces into learning centers. He posited that these centers can be used to engage more young people in areas such as technology and equip them for the future. Professor Edwards made the call during the Caribbean Maritime University Industry Academics Conference 2025 at the Jamaica Pegasus Hotel in New Kingston on October 1. In the early 80s, I was advocating with my church to use the churches as a learning center because most of those churches are closed during the week. They have services on Wednesdays and Saturdays, the NCU president said. The Seventh-day Adventist Church organization has 750 churches and they have human resource capital sitting in those churches. So imagine if you are to place computers in those churches as a direct strategy of the government to assist those churches, and then the human capital there would then bring the community persons to do work right there, to study, to learn, he continued. He pointed out that males outnumber females in the technology courses offered at NCU and argued that the greater use of the church centers, particularly by males, could reduce some of the social problems being experienced in the society. I would tell you that the only courses that males outnumber females in at Northern Caribbean University are technology courses. So in other words, males have a natural affinity for technology. They want to be there. So a number of the social problems we are having with the males could be helped by having them come to these churches, get involved in technology that they love. So we have to look at the strategy broadly to include some of these communities, Professor Edwards said. Responding to a question regarding AI, virtual learning, and its impact on students, the professor pointed out that AI has revolutionized the learning. It has personalized it, and in a true sense, no child needs to be left behind because they just need access to the technology which they can use. So I think it's a greater tool to have, he said. Meanwhile, President CMU Professor Andrew Spencer said a critical analysis is even more important in the teaching and learning environment. With this kind of access to information and the tools in the way that the students now have it, what it has done is to level the playing field. It means that lecturers and the teachers have to step their game up. It means that the superficial sharing and the delivery of information is no longer important. because I can get that elsewhere, he said. So the need for the critical analysis and all those other things which are evolving would be important, but for the students, I think it is an important time. We are at an inflection point, and how we responded to it as institutions will determine what our future looks like in keeping pace with the rest of the world, he added. Guys, thank you for watching. See you this evening at 6 p.m. for another news update.